This episode's character, Hagar, mother of Ishmael, servant of Sarah, surrogate, petitioner, runaway. We meet her in Genesis chapters 16 through 21. She nearly becomes a victim of Sarah's flawed plan to sidestep infertility before Hagar's faith in God's promise elevates her story. Brought to you by Fortt Media, this is Character Study with Jon Fortt and David Tieche. Download free resources at bible.fortt.com. Welcome to Character Study. I'm Jon Fortt here with Dave Tieche. Got a little cold.
You sound a little Barry Whitey. It's your voice, the timbre of your voice is a little deeper of your already deep voice.
Now let's talk about the Bible, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow.
I'm a little under the weather, although I was thinking about that, and weather generally happens way up in the air, so aren't we
I'm always under the weather.
If we're over the weather,
you're in a plane.
And you can get sick on a plane, so the whole thing then gets disproven like a theorem.
Yeah, not great. Oh, what are you drinking there?
Tea with honey. Because
it looked like diluted Mountain Dew, and I was pretty sure that wasn't what it was.
That would not be good for a cold. I have a feeling.
When you were 10, that might have been good.
Well, I thought it was good, but...
Did you ever drink like Jolt?
In college.
Did you really? Oh, I thought that was only a junior high thing.
I drank all kinds of things in college I shouldn't have. But you know that. You were there.
I was there. I was there. Yeah, I have no comment.
Well, speaking of which, we are two best friends for 30 years now. No longer drinking ill-advised things, only tea with honey when we have a cold. And trying to dive deep into characters in the Bible for what they illustrate about where God is pointing us and God's relationship with us. I'm a journalist for, 25-ish years. Dave, you're a pastor and a teacher for about the same amount of time. So different perspectives, but both endeavoring to walk with Christ and understand these examples for better and for worse that have been sketched out for us in the Bible.
Yeah. I like to say that the Bible is like a mirror. Sometimes it like holds up a mirror to us and it asks us questions about ourselves. And sometimes these characters are sometimes not the hero. In fact, there's only one real hero in the Bible, and it's not a person, or it's not, it's Jesus or God or whatever you want to say.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. That's
what I mean by that. It's not like,
I was like,
it's not like any of the, but, it does allow us to really examine ourselves. And I think that the more we think and meditate on it, it really does help us kind of figure out how am I living my life? Am I living my life in this way or in that way? So I think you're right on that.
So we've been talking about starting off Abraham, but then also some of the other people in Abraham's life, in Abraham's orbit. So we started off with Abraham, talked about Sarah, and now Hagar. Tell me about Hagar.
Oh, yeah. This is a tough story. Hagar kind of shows up in Genesis 16, but it's in a context where, as we talked about the last couple episodes, Abraham and Sarah have been promised a child, an offspring, but they're old. And then there's a delay, and that's the problem. The problem is not that God has promised them a kid. It's that it hasn't happened nearly as quickly as they thought. And it's a really long time. And so years go by, and Sarah starts to get a little desperate. And this is what happens, I think, as we're going to see again and again in the scriptural record, and also just in our own lives. Like when God doesn't do things on our timetable, we get really impatient and scared, and we start grasping and grabbing and kind of get the words I use with my friends is we get grabby. Like I have to get grabby and have to take things into my own hand, take the matters into my own hands. And so, what happens is it appears when they went to Egypt. Remember the last time when we talked about Egypt, they got a servant girl, and her name was Hagar. But this is a really difficult cultural thing to understand, and this is part of the problem with going back into the Bible as modern folks. Is sometimes it's like entering into a foreign country. When you travel internationally, sometimes the rules are different, and you're like, why are they driving on that side of the road, or why do people do that? I think sometimes we enter into a world that's so different, it's like disorienting to us. And this is one of those situations. Sometimes the word used is concubine, or the idea is that sometimes in the ancient world, when somebody was infertile, they would use one of their servants or slaves. I'm not even sure what the right word is, because those words have a lot of baggage, to bear children. And this is actually documented in archaeology in the Near East. I did some research on this just to be like, this is so strange. And there's quite a lot of documentation in archaeology. There's something called the Laws of Lipit Ishtar from 1900 years BC, which is documented. An old Assyrian marriage contract that they found also said that if the wife doesn't provide a man with offspring within 2 years, they can purchase a slave woman for that purpose. And even in the laws of Hammurabi, we have this idea of a servant person or servant girl providing an heir for some sort of patriarch. This feels so weird to us. It's actually hard to enter into it, but I guess this was it's very alien, but this is what's going on. And Sarah is not conceiving. And in Genesis 16, we see that she has no children, and this has been a promise from God. And they have the word, but she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. And so she said to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her."
Is this really, though, I'm just going to push back, that alien an idea? Because we're familiar with the idea of multiple wives, and that they did that in the Bible.
Sure.
That, David had multiple wives, etc. So this isn't that different, except that the mother of the child doesn't have status.
Zero.
Right?
Yeah.
So the child gets status.
Yes.
By virtue of who the child's father is, but the mother of the child does not get status.
Yeah. I still, even polygamy feels alien to me.
Well, that's good, Dave.
Well, you know what I mean? It's just not a concept. We just don't have that very much in our modern world. I agree with you. I think that it's very similar to the other examples that we have, but still, it's hard for me emotionally and intellectually and relationally to even enter into these dynamics. That's what I'm trying to say. I think it's a hard place to. It's just weird, man. It just feels super strange. So I think that's probably why these stories feel a little alien. But if you think about it, like in the ancient world, there's no like social security, there's no government help. Like these family tribes, that's all you have. And if you're outside that family tribe, you're done. This is why, all these Old Testament demands to take care of widows, or if like your brother dies, you are to take her wife into your tent. Not like necessarily as a wife, but if you're not married, then you literally marry her, because there's no provision for her. She'll die in the wilderness, so to speak. So there's not the social structures of protection. It's a pretty cruel ancient world. There wasn't a whole lot of protection for folks who were vulnerable, whether they're women or children or people who are displaced. So it's a little weird there.
So often most of it went to the oldest son.
Yeah.
And then, like maybe half plus goes to the oldest son, and then or 2/3, and then a third goes to, whoever's left and gets divided from there. So Abraham, at Sarah's suggestion, just to make it clear here, Abraham would want us to make it clear.
I love the next line. Abraham agreed to what Sarah said. Yeah, and saying, okay.
If you insist.
And then there's this line I'll continue to read. So after Abram had been living in Canaan 10 years, I mean, that's a decade. They're already old, and God said you're going to have a kid, and they're waiting a decade. So I'm not trying to be mean here, but it's like that's a long time. I understand her impatience at this. A decade's a long time when you're already old. Like imagine somebody who's 32 or 35 hearing you're going to have a baby, and you're like, finally, my biological clock is ticking. And then 10 years go by, you're going to be freaking out, So it says after 10 years, Sarai, his wife, took her Egyptian slave Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar and she conceived.
Now it does say to be his wife.
Yes, it does say that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think the implication is, that let me see what the word is here. Yeah, his wife, Ish, which is this idea that they laid together. That to sleep with someone like that is to be, in essence, married.
Well, it's a strong word.
It is a strong word.
It implies a level of legitimacy.
Yeah, or status, as have you ever seen?
Which is a problem.
It is. It's gonna become a big problem, right?
In just a couple lines, it's going to become a problem.
Yeah. I wanted to point out real quick. This is interesting. It says that depending on your translation, it says now Sarah's Abraham's wife had borne no children, but she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said, "Behold," which means to see, and then later on it says, "So he took Hagar and she took Hagar," and so the idea of see and took is once again present, this kind of biblical narrative, which you get all the way back in the garden, to see, desire, and take. So Sarai sees that she doesn't have a child. She sees her Egyptian slave. She desires to have a child. She takes the Egyptian slave. So the biblical authors are trying to show us this is a sin pattern, the see, desire, take. And then it also reminds me of the Garden of Eden because there's a passive male in it, right? With Adam, who just passively takes it, and Abraham just is like, okay, whatever you say. It's like he doesn't stand up and say, no, God told us it would be from our line, that you would bear a child. That just happened. God said to you, you were gonna have a kid. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out. That's an echo. This is not a good thing, is what I'm trying to say. The biblical narratives are showing us this is not good.
But I would also like to point out, they just got out of Egypt. And that whole shenanigan was Abraham's idea. He was not passive in that. He was like, okay, here's what we're going to do in Egypt.
Correct.
We're going to be brother and sister, which I guess technically wasn't a complete lie, but still not enough of the truth.
No.
And that didn't go well.
It did not.
So now when Sarah has an idea, Abraham's like, well, okay, you went with my Egypt scam, I guess. Hi, Hagar.
Right. You're right. And so Abraham takes matters into his own hands, right? And that didn't turn out well. God had to
not just matters. Oh, wait. Yeah, you're talking about Egypt.
I'm talking about in Egypt. Yeah. Oh, that was clever.
Yes.
So he took matters into his own hands in the previous Egypt story. And God had to basically rescue them, and he did. And then now Sarah, let's just call her Sarah and Abraham. I mean, their names aren't changed, but Sarah, she does that. And then it turns bad. So she conceived. When she knew she was pregnant, Hagar began to despise her mistress.
Which, I mean, she is both slave and wife here, which is a problem.
Yeah, it is.
Like
that. Then Sarai said, "You're responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now that she knows she's pregnant, she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me." So this is the first big marriage fight we see.
Yes. Now, may the Lord judge between you and me is a heavy statement.
It is.
Because, I mean, you almost think the Lord might be like, why are you putting me in it? This was not my idea. And if the Lord were to judge in this situation, I'm not sure he would come down the way Sarah expects.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the other times, may the Lord judge. The Israelites say that a lot, that they say it to Moses. Is there a way that you could paraphrase, may the Lord judge between you and me, for modern folk? Because I don't think we use that phrase. How would you say it?
I mean, I think it means, I'm right.
Yeah.
Like, I'll go down to the grave believing this, and then the Lord's going to sort it out. Right.
But you know whose side he's going to be on.
Right. Which, but I think that's the intent.
Yeah, I think you're right. May the Lord judge between you and me is a way of saying, I guess, like the Lord knows what's going on, and you know what side he's going to come down on, and it's not yours, right?
Of a Real Housewives type, drop statement.
I think it's interesting. This is the second time Sarah has said something. Like, she says, the Lord's kept me from having children, which is true, but she's also kind of blaming God a little bit there. And that feels a little, I don't know, it feels a little gross.
All right.
And then
let me take Sarah's advocate.
I mean, it's true. It's true. I'm not saying it is true. But then she's like, you did this to me to her husband. You did this. You were responsible for the wrong I'm suffering. It's like, whose idea was it, Sarah? So
he might be. Now, if he put some soft music on and started treating Hagar extra special,
right,
around this time,
which just goes to show that polygamy doesn't work real well. Every time we see polygamy, it's a relational disaster.
Every time we try it, Dave. Every time.
Yeah. First of all, just I think about. No, I don't want to get into that. I can't handle one wife, let alone multiple. Are you kidding? Anyway, so Abraham says, "Your slave is in your hands. Do whatever you think is best." And then it says, "Then Sarah mistreated Hagar so that she fled from her." So it was so bad that Hagar actually ran away, which must have been incredible amounts of mistreatment because it doesn't look like Hagar's got anywhere to go.
And kind of defeats the purpose, right?
What do you mean?
I mean, Sarah wanted Hagar around to have this kid.
Mm-hmm.
And now Hagar's gone. She's short a servant and a kid.
Yeah. Sometimes we do. Yeah. You have a good point.
Now, why doesn't God let her go?
What do you mean?
Hagar.
Oh, well, we haven't got to that. Let me read it. Yeah. Well, I had a question for you. Can I ask you a question before we get into that? Because
yeah.
Obviously, we got in their narrative. I don't think it's always wise to import like modern concepts or categories into the Bible because, sometimes our modern understandings sometimes are a little bit skewed. But I made a list of some things, and I wanted to ask you a question about what your opinion was on this. So there's some narrative hints in here, and I made a list of them, so I'm going to read them. It does seem as though Sarah controls every aspect of Hagar's life, including the use of her body. Abraham affirms Sarah's control over Hagar. Sarah inflicts abuse. The word mistreated in Genesis 16 is actually the same word used later on in the story of Exodus with the Egyptian oppression of the Israelites. That's in Exodus 1:11. So it's a bad word. Mistreated is a bad word. Hagar is impregnated, not of her choice. Hagar is not free to return to her home. Once the child is born, her child, the owners take the child from her. And the situation causes Hagar to despise Sarah. That's what we just read. And that word, when she runs away, that's Genesis 16, she runs away. That word fled, bara, is later used in Exodus 2:15. When Pharaoh heard of this, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled to the desert. Remember that when he flees? So is it wise for us to think about Hagar in a modern term of like sexual captive, sexual traffic, sexual slave? Or is that not wise? When you read this, does that echo into you? What do you think about that? Because, the UN's definition of sexual trafficking is the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by improper means, such as force, abduction, fraud, or coercion, for an improper purpose, including forced labor or sexual exploitation. Do you think that that's fair, or do you think that that's importing modern categories and isn't helpful?
Well, I think it's important to ask the question. And then I think it's also important to say the entire relationship between men and women in the society would fall under several uncomfortable definitions that we have today, where in large part, when women are married or taken in marriage, it's not their choice.
Yeah, it's true.
The Abraham and Sarah's grandson is going to marry two sisters.
Yeah.
Right? One of whom he doesn't particularly care for.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like a really messed up gender, family, sexual relationship dynamic that's being sketched out through scripture here. And I think if there's redemption inherent in the telling of the story, is it's not presented as good.
No, for sure.
It's not like, and then they got the slave pregnant and it all worked out great.
Right. Do you think, though, that it's for some people, it might activate their empathies toward Hagar, and that might be helpful? Do you think that might be helpful for modern readers to have or do you think it's too distracting of a term, or do you think it depends on the person?
Well, I think it's problematic if it doesn't activate your sympathies toward Hagar.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
I think sometimes also what the scripture is saying is God's plan isn't derailed by human boneheadedness and sin.
Right.
Like he's still going to do what he said he was going to do, even though there have been these complications and these bad decisions.
Yeah, and I do think we're invited to look at the full range of a relational and emotional devastation and awfulness that this causes. This is a grenade in the family, and it hurts everybody. So no good comes. Well, let's continue on. Hagar fled, the same word from Exodus, or the same word from when Moses fled. It's a fear word. She flees into the middle, and it says, the angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It's a spring that's beside the road to Shur, and Shur is part of Egypt, the road to Egypt. So I guess she's going back home. And he said to her, Hagar, a slave of Sarah, where have you come from and where are you going? And I'm running away from my mistress. So first of all, God finds her and then asks her a question, like, where are you going and where have you come from? I find that utterly fascinating, Well,
it's an echo of Eden.
100%. Where are you? Right. And whenever God asks a question, it's not because he needs information, he's inviting a conversation with her. I think that's utterly fascinating. Where have you come from and where are you going? I think that's worth pondering,
Yeah. Cause it's different from where are you in the sense, where are you is like, drop it. What do you have in your hands? Right.
Yeah.
Kind of like a hand in the cookie jar type moment.
Right.
Where have you come from and where are you going is more.
Yeah. And also it feels like there's an invitation here to tell the story of what's happened to her. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that this is where, I grew up in the Midwest and Midwest Protestantism. And the idea of confession or talking to God about sin was only a private thing. So sin, as a definition, as I was given it, was sin's the bad stuff that you do, right? And the Bible's got more categories for sin than that, because there are more categories to sin than that. And one of the categories is the sin that's been done to you. And that also invites confession, because that hurts and harms us. So if somebody's done something to you, God also wants you to talk about that. I'm not saying that Hagar doesn't have her part. Obviously, she's bitter, but it's like, she's bitter for what reason? It's like, there's a cause-effect relationship here. So God's inviting her, I think, to share her story about her mistreatment, about the wrong that's been done to her. And I think God invites us to have honest conversations with him about the stuff that's been done to us, that's hurt us, the people that have wronged us, or the injustices that we have faced, whether they're small or big or somewhere in the middle. And that's part of confession as well. And I just never thought about that, or I never had those categories when I was growing up. I only thought that confession, or even if you have a Catholic background, you go into confession to talk about all the bad things you've done or thought, right? This is much more robust of an invitation from God. Tell me your story. Where did you come from? Where are you going? What are you running from? And what are you trying to run to? I think that this is an incredibly relational question that invites tremendous closeness and relationship with Hagar. God seems to really care about her real story, about what's gone on with her. I think that's beautiful.
True. But then I also wonder, why not just let her go?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, here's what happens. She says, I'm running away from my mistress. And then the angel of the Lord told her, go back to your mistress and submit to her. And then he makes her a promise. I will increase your descendants so much they'll be too numerous to count. And then the angel of the Lord said, you're now pregnant. You're going to give birth to a son. You will name him Ishmael. Doesn't this have echoes, right? You'll give birth to a son and you will name him a particular name. We're going to see that a lot later in the story with a very important character. The Lord heard your misery. So that's a foretaste of Exodus. The Lord's heard your cries. And then it says, your son will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone and everyone's hand will be against him. and he will live in hostility toward all his brothers. So, and then she goes, so first of all, before we go any further, the wild donkey, that confused me for a long time. Basically, it means he's going to be untamed and unbridled. No one's going to put a saddle on this guy. He's going to be slave to no one. Your son will be free. But it's going to be a tough go, but he's going to be free. So there's that. So she gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. You are the one who sees me. For she said, I have now seen the one who sees me. And then she names the well that. So that's what's going on in the story.
She listens.
She does.
And just to, since we're drawing parallels, I see a John the Baptist parallel here.
Oh, the wild donkey, kind of an untamed guy out in the wilderness.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
First pregnancy, angel arrives. Right.
Yep.
And there's going to be a second one later, and then there's going to be an interaction between the two.
Yep.
And then there's also a Jacob Esau parallel here.
The favored son versus the non-favored son. Is that what you're going to for?
Yeah. The oldest, Esau on the wilder side, and going to have an interaction with the younger. So things being done out of order, out of place, and a sort of sibling rivalry type setup in the Jacob Esau sense. But then also, we could get into the whole John the Baptist Jesus thing and the whole thing that rose up around John the Baptist in early times and why that was controversial. It's a whole different theological and historical issue.
We're not even getting there. That's a long time from now. We're early in the story, John. Yeah,
early in the story. Yeah, but there's an interesting. I don't want to say conflict exactly, but juxtaposition, contrast being set up even at this stage between these two women and these two sons.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you asked the question. Yeah. Yeah. And you asked the question, like, why have her go back? And I wrote some notes down. And in the end answer is, I don't think the text gives us, and I don't know. So I wrote, in the end, I'm not even sure I understand the depths of what God was asking Hagar to do. He asked her to trust him and go back to where she was abused and mistreated. Is this God's invitation to Hagar to confront the pain of her past? Is she to restore relationships that should be restored? Was God rescuing her from a fate worse than slavery in Egypt? Was this an invitation to forgiveness or reconciliation? Was God inviting her to endure through a season of suffering made possible by the promise of the future, which was kind of beyond her wildest imaginations? Is God doing something in Hagar's character to fill her with empathy and compassion for the broken and the cast away, just as she had been broken and cast away? The answer is I don't know. Maybe all of them, maybe none of them. But she does. And then she names, something is happening inside of her because she says, you're the God who sees me. And she names God. And this is the first character who names Yahweh in the text. And she's like an Egyptian slave running away, and she gives God a name. God sees me. And that's like super duper important. And I think that that's incredibly important and beautiful as well. So something happened in her. She didn't necessarily blame Abraham for the mistreatment. She didn't put that up on God. She sees God for who he is. And it's pretty interesting to me. And to your question, I don't know why God made her go back. It must have been better for everybody. That's the only thing I can come up with.
Yeah, I guess he didn't want Abraham's baby mama just out there, telling stories on him, not getting support. That's not not a very auspicious start, right?
No,
for somebody who's supposed to represent you.
Yeah,
but
that's a good. Oh, you're saying it's like if Abraham's the quote representative of God, then he can't be mistreating and casting off his baby mamas out into the wilderness. There has to be care for those who are in God's family. God's showing something about his character and kind of what he's like.
Right.
Yeah,
it's
that's
hard to
great
have
too.
Like a God endorsement deal and
right. And then be this bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Be like having a Nike endorsement deal and shooting 2 for 15 every night. You just can't do that. Well, you shouldn't do that.
You shouldn't do that.
That's good too. You're right on that too, I think, John.
And God speaks directly to Hagar.
Yes.
In a way that we haven't seen God speak directly to a lot of people at this point.
Noah and Abraham. No, he confronts Cain. But yeah, let's just put it, it's rare. And is this the first? No, he talked to Eve, but the first kind of female character outside of the Eve narrative, which also the Adam and Eve narrative always felt a little representational. You know what I mean? So this is a historical female that God talked to, and she's nobody. And that's going to continue on in the rest of the biblical narrative. There's a whole bunch of nobodies that God comes to, nobodies. And they all have these incredible encounters with God, and he changes and transforms their lives, and they see something of you. And he comes to like nobodies. And I love that. You're pregnant and will give birth to a son, and you'll name him Ishmael. Later on, God would come to another nobody, a girl, in the middle of nowhere, who was nobody, named Mary. And so he comes to lots of nobodies. And that's really inspiring as well to me.
So it's character study. I'm going to have to ask a question. Who do you like better, Hagar or Sarah?
I like Sarah. I do not like Sarah better. I put her in a low category. I find her difficult to like. And I have tremendous compassion for Hagar. She shows bravery. This story, I think, is incredibly beautiful for anyone doing the inner work of looking at their own past. God sees her. She names it. I think she's deeply mistreated. It's hard not to take her side. And then God provides for her in some ways, even if it might have been difficult. He provides a safe place for her, So I'm always going to go down to Team Hagar. Sarah does not come out looking good on this, dude.
Yeah, just because God chooses somebody doesn't necessarily make them more likable.
Correct.
Like on the character side. With Sarah, I mean, she listens to her husband when he's right. She listens to her husband when he's wrong. She advocates for herself. That's good. She advocates for her son. We'll get to that.
She does.
So she has some good qualities. Hagar, though, she's having to work. She has less to work with.
Way less.
She's sympathetic in a way that Sarah's not.
Yes.
And this moment when she's had enough, she's been mistreated. She leaves, God through an angel confronts her, and she goes back and says, God sees me. That's character development at a whole different level than we've gotten from Sarah.
100%. And honestly, if you think about it, if you're going to make another juxtaposition, Abraham has faith that God's going to do for him what God's promised. And Hagar's faith is every bit as big as Abraham's. She goes back and believes, okay, he said that he's going to do this stuff. I'm going to believe God and I'm going to trust him. And that's a huge lesson that we're supposed to learn, that when, to trust God, even if the circumstances don't seem to be meeting it out, or even if it's confusing, to trust God in the middle of that. She's juxtaposed to the best moments in Abraham's life. Do you know what I mean? And her faith is every bit as big as Abraham. She trusts in this Yahweh and finds out every bit. She learns about Yahweh just as Abraham learns about Yahweh. So I'm super pro Hagar. I think the narrative gives us that. And I don't know. It shows that kind of God rewards this kind of trust in any and all people who have it or exhibit it. And Hagar's just a nobody slave girl. And she's there as a kind of model exemplar, right?
Arguably, she rescues Abraham's reputation here.
100%. So yeah, that's where I am. Now, I'd like to do a little bit deep dive on Sarah later and see if there's more sympathetic stuff that we're missing. But as it stands right now, it's no contest.
Now, what about Abraham's move saying, do whatever you want with Hagar?
Again, I think that that's not a good look for him. I think that's passivity. It reminds me of the garden. He basically leaves her to be mistreated to the point of death and run away. It's not a good look for Abraham. So this is a strike. We talked about how Abraham's like good, bad, and the ugly, and there's times when he gets it 100% right, and there's times when he doesn't. And this is an example of, I would say, he gets it pretty wrong. He gets it wrong. Yeah, this is wrong. So not great.
Yeah. So what do you think we're supposed to take from Hagar's return and submission to mistreatment?
Here's when I reflect on this story, I think about fear because of the way the world works. I don't have control in a lot of things. And so a lot of times I get afraid. And it looks like in this story, God is inviting three distinct people to trust him even in the middle of circumstances where it doesn't really make sense. So like right before this, Abraham freaks out and he's like, okay, you're going to be my sister and they're going to kill me and they're going to take you. And God's trying to say to Abraham, look, I'm more powerful than Egypt. I control the destiny of nations, even Pharaoh. You can trust me. You're safe. And with Sarah, it's like, hey, look, you're barren and it's not happening, but I gave you the promise of a son and you're going to have to trust me. And you've forgotten that I'm the God of life and I will give you a son. There's no need to fear or to clutch or to take matters into your own hands. And with Hagar, he's saying, look, you are not suffering alone. You're not suffering in vain. I have seen you. I know the brutality. I know you've been dehumanized. I know you've been discarded. I know what's been done. And you are not a discarded nobody, an abused slave. You are future royalty. You're the mother. You're a queen. Yeah. Your son will grow into a great nation, and he and his descendants will not be enslaved by anyone. There's no need to fear. I'll take care of you too. So I think in each of these stories, there's an invitation from God to trust him, even when the circumstances do not look very, very promising, or the opposite of it, like literally the opposite of that. Even in the face of the opposite of what we think. I think as I reflect on these stories, that's what I see.
So in essence, she's returning to a promise, not just to abuse.
Yeah.
She's got more information than everybody else.
Yes. And God has promised and shown up. And I think when God shows up in those kind of dramatic ways and makes promises and then tells you to do something, those who trust Yahweh, they follow in, and even if it's difficult, good things, blessing, life, whatever it might be, follows.
Interesting. Hagar gets a promise after her pregnancy.
Yeah, it's true. Most people get a promise before.
Well, Abraham and Sarah did. Yeah. And maybe they're in a hurt people situation.
Seems like it.
They've had a promise that hasn't been fulfilled, and they're struggling. They're wrestling with that. Yeah. Hagar has a pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And is dealing with their frustrations, and then she gets a promise.
Yep. Yeah. Which shows the unique ways that God shows up to each of these people based on their situation, which I also think is cool.
Yeah. You don't always know what order to expect the promise and the frustration.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we need different things. I mean, we just need different things. Like, I think about it as a parent, and you know this, and my kids are so different from one another. They're so different. Even though they came from the same mama bear, the same papa bear, the same den, and they're so wildly different from one another. The way I parent them is actually radically different, and because they need different things. And my son needs to be whipped into shape. My daughter, she suffers from a lot of fear, so there's a lot of patience and quietness and reassurance with her. And with my son, it's like, oh my gosh, get out there, go, So they're very, very different. And we're starting to see the echoes of God dealing with individuals. But also there's a cosmic story here, right? There's a much bigger story. There's nations to bless and a world to save. And we can't forget that narrative as well.
Well, that's a great note on which to close. This has been a character study of Hagar. Dave Tieche, I appreciate it.
It's been great.
All right. I'll see everybody next time for what are we doing next time?
I don't know. Maybe we'll go to Lot.
Ooh, Lot.
Yeah, that's
Talk about messy.
Oof.
There's one in every family.
Yeah. I'm eager for your thoughts on this one. It's gonna be it's gonna be fun.
Hopefully just one.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
See you soon.
This has been Character Study with Jon Fortt and David Tieche. Download free resources at bible.fortt.com.